So, you want to learn how to play piano? Well, stick around. On today's show, our guest, Oksana Kolesnikova, shares some of the techniques that she uses to play the classic song, Malaguena. Now we're going to go through a tune that might not be quite so familiar to a lot of you, but it's really an interesting harmonic tune, interesting melodic tune, and I'm real excited to go through it. It's a tune called Malaguena. With me to go through that tune today is my guest, Oksana Kolesnikova. Hi, Oksana.
Hi, Scott.
I got your name right. Can you believe it? Shocking. I can't believe that. Okay, my work's done. Okay, how do you play Malaguena?
A little practice.
Right. I'm finished. How do you play Malaguena?
Malaguena, okay, well,
yeah, kidding.
I'm going to do the basic melody and the chord changes. And actually, the chord change is so simple. All we have are just two chords. Okay, we have C sharp and D.
It just comes back and forth.
Doesn't it sound Spanish?
Yeah, it really does.
That's
very true.
So,
yeah, play just a couple measures so we can get some of the melodic things, so we'll know what the tune is. That almost has a feel like when you hear that thing, you go, oh yeah, that one. It's a similar thing that I feel when you hear bolero. You know, when you hear that beginning. It says you'll hear a couple things, you go, oh yeah, that one.
Guitarists love to play this piece. It sounds so much
I bet it's almost a flamenco thing. You get a lot of the strumming stuff happening. Okay, so the chord changes really just went from one chord to the next.
That's all. So we have just one note melody. It would go something like this. Going, you know?
No doubt. So that whole thing just happens back and forth.
And then you feel when the change is needed. So, you know, it's just
great.
When you have to go to
and that, the way you just played it right there is really what you would do if you saw this on a lead sheet, right? If you had a lead sheet of this tune, there would be that melody line that you'd be playing one note, and then you'd be needing to, you'd see the chord changes for the D flat major chord and the D major chord. Is out there, and that's a pretty straightforward thing. So that's the basic part. That's kind of the skeleton of the tune, if you will. That's the you can't get any more basic than that. But obviously, you're out playing in public and you're out performing and doing your concerts and things. You're not going to play it like that.
Not like that.
Yeah, you're going to start doing things to kind of fill in the gaps a little and paint a more interesting picture. So, what are some of the things you would do with this?
Well, I would make for one bass a little bit more interesting, and I would move an octave lower, so it gives that more of a oomph. And I would use inversions more than chords. And like for example, this we use fifths. And then we invert in the seventh. And when we have to play D, you just go back and forth. So let me play for you that melody with all these inversions so you see what I mean.
Authentic, Oksana, the openness of it, and you hear those they call them either power chords or open fifths or whatever you want to call it. It's basically that major chord without the middle note in there. But that down low, that's such a nice, firm.
More
it is
solemn
it is. It's a very almost marchy, moving forward, going that way. And then to hear when you did the inversion, the openness of that, it's almost that same sound like when we've talked about tenths in the past, but it's that open sound. It's the only way you can hear down there, because I think for beginners sometimes it's a tough thing to remember that when you get down low, if you play all these thick chords, it's just going to
too muddy.
It's just too muddy. You can't hear the thing, so you have to open it up and get those notes spread apart.
Definitely. And well, you can use your chords in this from middle notes up until here. That wouldn't sound as muddy. So if you would do.
So you're playing some chord tones along with that melody.
Inversions.
So along with the melody stayed on top.
Melody stays on top, and then moves
filling in with chord tones below it. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Now, anything else as you're going to be marching through this? What about some right hand, different things you could do?
Right hand, as I mentioned, I can do chords.
Okay.
I can use octaves also. Sometimes I like, instead of just playing plain octaves, I double them with chords.
Okay.
So this way, I'll start with thirds. And here I would go. You can use octaves.
Now, what are you doing? Okay, now let's do that slower. That was an interesting thing. How did you? Now, the idea was your hand's not big enough to reach up with your thumb to get to that top one, so you had to.
The left hand, definitely.
The top,
yeah. I kept all the C-sharp bass at all times. So, and it gives kind of a guitar plucking effect.
Okay.
So if you use.
I hear that.
So it just doubled a little faster.
That makes good sense, and I didn't notice that until you just said it. That's almost like a classical guitarist. Plucking that bottom one as the bass, coming back up and getting the chord on the higher notes.
Yeah.
But now, how physically were you doing? Because I get a lot of feedback from viewers saying, gosh, I always see your guests playing these things, and my hands just aren't big enough to do these stretches and all that. And then one of my comebacks is always, well, you need to kind of roll from one to the other, and you just did that.
Oh, my hands are not huge, but it's just a lot of rolls of that. You practice slowly until you get very comfortable with that, and then you start speeding up. And
I actually saw you when you were doing it. You may not have even known you were doing it. I actually saw you almost bring your arm around and to do this.
It helps. So this way, I landed straight from above instead of sometimes you can hit neighboring notes.
Well, that makes sense. So by lifting up and getting at you, you're coming down on it. Better. See, I'm going to learn all these nice classical things from you.
Sometimes,
I'm such a hack piano player. I'm going to steal all these good classical ideas from you. That really does make sense. If you're coming down over the top of the note, it's probably going to be a more accurate strike, if you will, or target practice, or whatever you want to say when you get to it. All right. Now, is there anything structure-wise in this tune? It really just goes through that melodic thing, following those two chords. Is there like a B section or a bridge section to this, or does it really just go through the whole thing? I'm not that familiar with the tune.
Yeah, there are some other sections, of course, like, for example, we have melody in the left hand.
So in that case, I've got a couple things I want to steal from you there. I just saw a couple different things. First of all, the interesting was you said you were playing the melody in the left hand.
Melody in the left hand, and a lot of it is thumb.
Okay, but so your right hand was just doing kind of you could call it an accompaniment or whatever, but it was really just doing kind of a setting the stage thing up high while you had the. Now, my vision of that is, when you're in a band or an orchestra, that's when the trombones are in the middle, taking the, or the French horns, or the horns have this nice lead line in the middle, and you don't normally get a melody there, and it's like everything else gets out of the way. You get some low bass or some high trilly things, and these and they have the space in the middle to do that. So that's a good thought on that from an orchestra standpoint. The other thing I wanted to see, just to steal the way you did it, because I have trouble doing that myself. How did you do that trill thing? And if we can do it down a couple octaves so we can see it better on the thing.
Well, first I started like in slow motion.
Okay. Now, I saw one thing where you were actually...
That's one, and then you just do something like that. You just shake your hand.
Now, I thought I saw you, and maybe you didn't even know you did it. See, now I'd have a hard time doing it, but I saw one where you were doing that, but you had one finger like in the middle. And it was on a white note. I don't know what exactly you're doing, but it looked like you were twisting back and forth, keeping one down, and that makes a lot of sense to me. It almost lets your...
balance it
it balances your hand, because when I do this, I get the shakes. I just get the hand lock.
It's not timed to shake, because you have to time your shake.
But I've never seen that, so that's a good one. So you were doing that with the finger down and just rocking back and forth.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
That helps.
That's a good one to steal that way. All right. Anything else you can think of in this one?
For me, this piece is so impactful, so I love doing octaves in this piece, in double and octaves in both hands. And I know it looks, it looks difficult, but you can very well, with practice, you can do anything. So I love doing something like this. So it's
that does look impressive, and it sounds impressive. That really is getting a lot of the piano. And every time in that entire case, you using the same note in 4 different octaves.
And 4 different octaves,
and,
yeah.
You know,
just
2 octaves
have
in each
that
hand.
Motion.
It's probably, you know, lock your hands together.
Lock hands together.
Put a big rubber band between your hands. You know, don't let it go. I'm sure it's one of those things. Yeah, okay. Well, that's a really, I guess, traditionally classical sound. Sometimes you hear the, you know, a break in a tune and then this big run coming down that way. And I don't think I ever knew that was just all octaves coming down. When I heard it, it made a lot of sense. So.
Yeah.
All right. Well, listen, let's hear you get through this one then, and I will, I'll be anxiously looking for some of these little things. We'll watch the melody in the left hand at one point. We'll pay attention to the chord changes. Seem pretty straight ahead, just those 2 chords back and forth.
Okay.
And watch for some of your trills, your tremolos, whatever.
Let's do it.
Outstanding. That's great. Thank you so much, Oksana. Thanks.
The Piano Guide is also made possible in part by the Pearl River Piano Company, celebrating 50 years of supplying the world with pianos, from uprights to concert grands.